Hello, and welcome back to my channel. So I just finished reading the fourth story in my portable Chekhov edition here, and it's a story called At the Mill. So in my last video about a calamity, I had said that was the fourth story in the book. I was wrong. That was the third story in the book. This video here, At the Mill, is the fourth short story in this particular Chekhov edition. So I finished reading it last night, and then I sort of revisited it a little bit this morning. It's a really interesting story. It's a fairly simple plot line. Essentially, we are introduced in the beginning to this miller named Alexei. He is described as being just a giant of a man. He is incredibly tall, incredibly muscular. Chekhov spends a lot of time describing his face. He compares him to a character from a Jules Verne novel. Really just paints a picture of sort of an otherworldly sort of human, of this superhuman. And this is in contrast to his personality. So his appearance is one of heroic strength and magnitude. And then his personality, he's quite conniving. He's quite almost snake-like in a lot of his interactions in the short story that we have. He's not a very friendly person. He is he's very standoffish in his conversations, and most all of his conversations we have in this story transfer from conversation to confrontation, which I find really interesting. So essentially, after we're introduced to this miller, and his basically always drunken assistant. The miller, Alexei, is sitting outside of his hut when two monks come up from the river outside of his mill, and they have been fishing there. And Alexei gets incredibly irritated with these two monks for fishing in the river, because he has purchased a section of the river to be able to run his water mill in to mill his grain. And so he doesn't want people fishing in his river. He doesn't want people messing with his river. And so these monks come up and say they've been fishing, and he gets incredibly upset with them, and they say basically that he does not own the entire river, that he only has owner's rights to the small portion of water that his water wheel spins in. And so they have this conversation about this river and who truly owns it, and Alexei tells them to never come back and never fish in his river again. And they say that at their monastery, the Father Superior said they could fish there, and there's just this. It lasts for about a page and a half or 2 pages of this conversation about the rights of the monks to fish in this particular river. And so while they're having this conversation, there's a dam that goes over the river, and an elderly woman appears up on this dam. Alexei notices her, as do the two monks, and the monks call out to her. She is an acquaintance of theirs. She is one of the residents in this very small village where everyone basically knows everyone else. And so they holler out to her. She hollers back to them. They have, somewhat of a small conversation, just very superfluous greetings. Then she comes down off the dam towards them and joins into their group. And we find out that she is Alexei's mother, and that Alexei has one other brother, Vasily. That there are two sons. This woman has two sons. And she goes on to tell the monks how she has two sons, the miller and then one who lives in town, and neither of them could care whether or not she was alive or dead. But without them, she would die. That she loves her sons; they are her joy. She calls them her joy, and that she she keeps on living because she gets to see them, and that if they ever left her, she would die. But they don't care if she's alive or not. They don't really care for her anymore, which is it's a very sad moment in this conversation, because her son is standing right there in front of her, and she's saying this, and he doesn't care. So we get a lot of interesting conversation between the monks, the miller, and the miller's mother, because they all know each other, and they all sort of know each other's position in society, and so we get a lot of really interesting conversations between them. Essentially, what happens towards the end of this story is Alexei, the miller, is such an interesting personality, because he starts to feel bad about the way he has treated his mother. He really does for a second. And when he is about to leave, his mother hands him a spice cake that she saved from a party that she had been invited to, and she wanted to give this, this piece of cake, slice of cake, whatever, to her son. He gets upset at her for something unrelated to that event, and sort of slaps her hand, slaps this cake down, and yells at her. And she gets incredibly fearful of him, because he's gigantic, he's otherworldly, he's beastly. And so she really recoils from him, and she doesn't recognize him really for the way he lashes out at her, and she gets scared, and she starts to leave. And the monks feel incredibly bad for her. This whole time, the whole group is still together. This entire story, this whole group is still together, and it's just the course of a conversation. So the monks feel really bad for her, and basically, sort of confront Alexei. Are you going to treat your mother this way? After all she's done for you? And so Alexei reaches into his coin purse, and he pulls out this wad of money, this wad of paper money and coins. And so you think, as the reader, that he's just going to walk up to his mother and hand her this large amount of money. But he sort of shakes it out in his hand until there's a one coin left. A 20 kopeck piece is left in his hand. And the monks are watching him as he is pulling this bundle of money out, expecting him to deliver the entire quantity of the money to his mother. And then he locks eyes with the monks and sorts through this money until one of the smaller coins is left in his hand. And that's what he walks up and gives to his mother. So you think he's going to change, then right at the end, he kind of goes back into his old personality of sort of cheating people out, of not really caring for the well-being of anyone, and then he just walks away. And that's how the story ends, sending his mother back to town. It's a very interesting story. It's a lot more conversation heavy than some of the other short stories in this collection have been so far. It was not my favorite of these short stories, simply because I had trouble connecting with some of the characters. I know with the medium of short stories, it can be difficult because you don't have as much time or information associated with particular characters. But there was just something about Alexei that I was unable to have any sympathy towards him. And then the mother, we only get the conversation of the actual story that she's involved in. We don't get any of her backstory. And so we don't really know where she's coming from. And we don't get any information of the other brother either. And so I felt a little information starved to be able to come up with my sympathies for the characters. But the conversations were incredible. The story as a whole, I did enjoy it, and I definitely would revisit it again in the future. So that was At the Mill, the fourth story in this portable Chekhov edition. Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to leave a comment if you would like, and I will see you in the next video.